Stamford Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. Stamford Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Listen, that was a huge result, a massive win, another huge step forward in securing Champions League football for next season. Look, I'm going to be honest, right? I need to be 100% honest with you guys. We did not deserve to win that game. We did not deserve it. But do we care? Absolutely not. And look, I'm going to get into the game. But before I do, I want to talk about the actual lineup. Because, of course, going into this game against Chelsea, there was a lot of question marks, in terms of what our back line was going to be. Because, of course, we had no Harry Maguire, no Lissandro. The lit's been out for quite some time. And at the very last minute, we lost Lenny Yoro, which was a huge blow for us. And of course, there was a lot of question marks in terms of, are we going to go with a back three? Are we going to go with a back four? And Carrick's decided to, of course, go with the back four. And to our surprise, he's gone with Mazraoui as the centre-back alongside Heaven. Now, we've seen Mazraoui play in the back three. And he's done quite decent there at times. But in the back two is a different type of ball game, And I thought he was exceptional today. I want to just start off the video by giving huge praise to Aiden Heaven and Mazraoui because I thought they had an excellent game. First half, yes, there was a lot of uneasiness. You could sense the vulnerability. And, there was sloppiness at times, a few bad challenges. And Chelsea could have easily gone ahead. But I thought those two in particular, for me, put in a really, really solid performance, given the fact that, it's the first time they're playing together and Mazraoui is not a natural centre-back, especially in the back two, but I thought he done exceptionally well. So, of course, in the lineup, we had the back four of Shaw, Heaven, Mazraoui and Dalot. Midfield, of course, is the same usual midfield of Casemiro, Mainu and Bruno. And then in attack, we had Cunha on the left and Mbeumo on the right and Sesko up top, which I'm not going to lie, a little bit was surprising because I thought, if we're going to hit the team on transition, I thought Chelsea would have a lot of the ball and we would essentially hit them on the counter-attack a lot. So I thought in that sort of scenario, in that sort of, play, I thought we would rather have Mbeumo as the 9 and maybe Ahmad on. But, of course, Garrick's decided to go with Sesko, which I'm not going to complain. I think he deserves to start giving, his run of form under him. So, first half, though, I do have to be honest, it was a very, very poor performance in that first half. I felt like we looked very nervous. We looked very uncomfortable. We looked quite vulnerable at the back. And Chelsea could have very easily, have gone ahead. They had early chances, through Enzo Fernandez. And yeah, they just created more chances than we did, and they just looked more lively. They looked like the team that was more likely to score in that first half. They had chances. I thought like their attack was a little bit, their decision making in the final third at times let them down. Also, which was a big boost for us, was that Esteval got an early injury because I think he was quite lively in that first half and I felt like he was giving us problems. He hit the post quite early on as well, so the threat was there. And obviously he had to come off and Garnacho had to come on. And I think that was a huge loss for Chelsea, especially in their attack. But I felt like we were on the back foot for most of that first half. I felt like, we weren't really good in attack. We weren't really stringing passes together. There was a lot of sloppiness, a lot of mistakes, especially in that final third. I felt like, we weren't really creating much chances. But then eventually, out of nothing, Bruno Fernandes, once again, midfield maestro, the best player in the Premier League this season for me, pops up, with a moment of brilliance to, set up for Cunha, who then slots it home. And we go 1-0 at half-time. And I felt, what? It was definitely against run of play. We definitely deserve it, but sometimes you need to be able to win games when you're not performing well. The best teams are the ones that can still capitalize and, still win games when they're not playing well. We used to do that. Manchester United, we used to do that under Fergie quite a lot. Even when we're not performing, we still find ways to win football matches. And I felt, it was quite good for us to go into half-time with the lead. And I felt like when we came out in the second half, I felt like we were a lot more at ease. I felt like the structure defensively was a lot better. I felt like, we looked a lot more comfortable in that second half. However, again, I felt like Chelsea was still on the front foot. Of course, them being the home team, them knowing what's at stake, and them needed to get a result. Chelsea are a team that are currently, before today's game were 3 losses on the bounce at home. So, and they're also chasing Champions League football. So, there was a lot at stake for them. But, I thought we managed it well. they were still the better team. I felt like overall, even in that second half, I felt like they were still the better side. But given, of course, the circumstances, it kind of made sense. But I thought we handled it well. We closed out the game quite well. Chelsea, of course, had a few chances in that second half. Delap hit the crossbar. I think somebody else had a good chance, Casado from distance. So I mean, they had a few good chances, and they could have on a different day. Let's be honest, on a different day, Chelsea could have easier scored, and they could have easier won that game. But of course, they are on a bad run of form. Maybe there's a lack of confidence there, especially with their wingers. I thought Garnacho was really poor when he came on, really poor. And I don't think he's helping himself. Obviously he's not quite loved at Manchester United anymore. The fans don't really rate him anymore, obviously, given how he left us. And I think the Chelsea fans have turned on him as well, man. I mean, today he was, I would say, ineffective, man. Sometimes you want your wingers, to be the difference makers, and I think that's Chelsea's biggest issue, is that their wide men just don't do enough. Whether it's creating chances, whether it's scoring goals, whether it's causing havoc, they don't do that enough. And I felt like that's what really let them down today. I thought Delap didn't have. I mean, it was one of his better games, but again, not efficient in front of goal. And I do feel like they missed João Pedro a lot. I think for us, Manchester United, we're very fortunate that João Pedro didn't play today, because I felt like if João Pedro had played today, we would have very easily have lost that game. I think João Pedro obviously has been their biggest threat. He's scored the most goals for them. He's one of the highest goal scorers in the league this season. So I think that was a huge loss for Chelsea. It benefited us quite well. But I think Chelsea attackers need to look at themselves, I think that front three of Neto, Garnacho, and Delap, they need to look at themselves, because at the end of the day, you are playing against, a very young centre-back in Heaven, and a player that's not naturally a centre-back in Mazraoui. And the fact that they, looked comfortable, they had a great performance, against your attack. It speaks volumes. I think that's a big red flag for me, and I think Chelsea really need to address that, this summer, because, you can't go to battle with that. I'll be so real with you. You can't go to battle with that. And if Chelsea don't get a new set of attackers this summer, I mean, they're pretty much doomed. I'll be real with you, because you can't rely on the likes of Neto, Garnacho, and Delap, to fire you to, Premier League titles, Champions Leagues, FA Cups. You're looking like, it looks likely that Chelsea will miss out on Champions League. But yeah, I'll talk about what this game means for both teams. Of course, for us, I already said we are, one step closer to securing Champions League football mathematically. We're getting there. We're quite close to getting there. Job's not done, of course, but today's result was massive. But for Chelsea, it's worrying times, man. It's worrying times, because that's 4 losses on the bounce at home. They have not been performing well. They crashed out badly in the Champions League. Right now, it's looking very, very, bad in terms of where they're at, and in terms of their hopes of securing Champions League football for next season. Yeah, it's looking dark, and I feel sorry for Chelsea fans, because I do resonate with them a lot. I do see a lot of similarities between United and Chelsea. I feel like both teams and both sets of fans, feel frustration towards ownership, feel frustrated towards decisions that are made at the club from the higher ups. And with Chelsea, it's obviously a different sort of context. Of course, they feel like the transfer strategies, the recruitment has been really poor over the last couple of years, and it's been a lot of investment in young players rather than bringing in ready-made world-class talent, that can push them to that next level. After they won that FIFA Club World Cup last summer, they really, they had a stable foundation in the young players of like the Cole Palmers and Enzo Fernandez, Casado, and they had a really good base. And what they actually needed was to, push further, was to get, ready-made world-class talents, to elevate them to becoming title challengers. And they didn't do that. They brought like for like, they got rid of Madueke, and I can't remember who else they got rid of, but then they ended up getting Garnacho and Gittins, who were for me off that same sort of caliber, category. And yeah, they just didn't really recruit well this summer, and unfortunately it showed in the season that they're having right now. I think it's very alarming. In terms, if you're a Chelsea fan, when you're seeing a lot of chopping and changing, a lot of investing and then selling, and not seeing much progress on the pitch, So I kind of understand the frustration with Chelsea fans. I do feel for them, but listen, only 5 teams can get into Champions League football, and listen, we're getting our job done. Had you told me before the season, this is where we would be and this is where Chelsea would be, I wouldn't have believed you. But look where we are. Look where we are. We are in comfortable third right now. Well, I wouldn't say comfortable. We're most likely, we'll get Champions League football. I feel like, and with Chelsea, it's not guaranteed. I know they got the FA Cup still to play for, but you ask any Chelsea fan, I'm sure they, just an FA Cup and missing out on Champions League is not, it wouldn't be enough for them. Given the fact that last season they had won, the Conference League, they won the FIFA Club World Cup. I felt like maybe this was the season for them to then push on further, but it hasn't gone that way. So yeah, it is gonna be, it is dark times for Chelsea at the moment. It is dark, but this is where they're at. But in terms of Man United, obviously bringing it back to Man United, I felt like, there was a lot of great performance on the pitch. I thought Mainu had a great game. I thought Dalot had a superb game. Shaw as well. I think defensively, especially in that second half, we were a lot more structured. I felt like we were a lot more solid. First half, yes, there was a bit of sloppiness, a bit of nerves, but kind of understandable given the context of the fact that it was a makeshift defense. But I thought we did well to get the job done. The performance wasn't great, but we did enough to get the job done. Mbeumo, though, I am a little bit concerned, guys. If I'll be honest with you, I am quite concerned about Mbeumo. I thought today he had an absolute stinker. And it's not the first time this has happened, but today was quite bad. I think nothing was going for him. Absolutely nothing was going for him. First touch was off. Decision making was bad. He just wasn't a threat, apart from that early chance in the first half where he laid it for Cunha, and Cunha then, fumbles it. And actually ends up getting a yellow card instead of putting the ball in the back of the net. Apart from that moment, he didn't really do much, and it is quite alarming, given that it's been happening for a while now. But I think what benefits this team, especially when players are out of form, especially the attackers, is that what's happening is that when one player is out of form, somebody else is picking up the slack. Before Carrick, it was Mbeumo, that was scoring the goals and getting the moments. Since Carrick's come in, it's been either Sesko or Cunha getting the goals and moments. So, it's gone the other way around. So, even Ahmad hasn't been great as of late as well. So, you can afford to do that when others are picking up, the slack. But eventually, there has to be, there's a responsibility for you to step up at some moments. You can't just rely on only one or two individuals to keep doing it, So yeah, it is quite alarming. Maybe he needs a rest. Maybe he needs to, to come off the bench, or I don't know. Something maybe needs to change. Maybe rest him for a game or two. Maybe start Ahmad. I don't know, but it is alarming. It is a bit of a red flag for me. But however, listen, that's 3 points in the bag. I'm a happy man. I can rest for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, tomorrow's a big game, massive game. Man City, Arsenal. The hate watch is on. The hate watch is on, but the hate watch feels better and it feels more comfortable knowing that your team got the result, and that's exactly what's happened. So listen, tomorrow's a big one. I will try to do a match reaction on here as well for that game as well. So stay tuned for that. And listen, let me know your thoughts on the game. Let me know who was your man of the match. For me, my man of the match, I have to give it to Mazraoui. I know Bruno had a phenomenal game in terms of he was our only outlet. Heaven done excellent in that game. Mainu was excellent as well. But for me, I have to give it to Mazraoui just because of the fact that this guy's not a centre-back, especially in a back two. Maybe back two, you can get away with it, because there's more protection. But in a back two, to perform the way he did today, I think he deserved man of the match for me. And a lot of people will give it to Bruno, especially for his brilliance in that first goal. But for me, I have to give it to Mazraoui, man. Marrakesh, stand up. Tangier, stand up. Morocco, stand up for your boy, because I'm telling you right now, that was a big performance. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the game. Let me know your thoughts, in terms of who your man of the match was, and also your thoughts on the situation with Chelsea. Also, your thoughts on, do you still think we're going to get Champions League football as well? Or are you still doubtful? Are you still a little bit concerned? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, peace.